Welcome back to Roots and Relevance. We are in the middle of a series called Stories of Revolution, where we are looking at the parables of Jesus. And today we're going to look at one that I think is pretty familiar to a lot of people, the parable of the talents. And I sent you guys a few articles. And of course, now I'm going to quote one from one that I actually didn't send you. That makes a lot of sense.
Well, it could be when you send us, since I did.
I didn't read it.
I can't here. Did you really send this one?
So the listener can understand.
You spent hours on this.
These guys show up at the podcast studio. What are we doing today? No, I'm just kidding.
I did.
They don't.
It's about crypto, right? It's about crypto.
Oh yes, I saw the title.
Yeah, and fraud in general. And I found an interesting article. Have you guys heard of a church out of Texas? It's like one of the biggest mega churches
Yes.
in the country. Robert Morris is the pastor who is just
Bobby
indicted on child sex charges.
He's been removed from pastors.
He has been removed from pastors.
They've been removed from society, I imagine, in jail. But if he's been a sex offense, but go ahead.
Yeah, not good. Also, on top of all that, their church has been sued for financial fraud as well. And let me just read a little bit from this article, and I want to hear just what comes up for you.
Okay.
It says this. This is talking about the suit against Gateway Church. The suit, filed October 4th, I believe of last year, alleges that then senior pastor Robert Morris and other Gateway leaders told their congregation 15% of all tithe dollars would be distributed to global missions and Jewish ministry partners. A review of Gateway's website shows that a similar promise remains on their global ministry homepage. But the suing congregants allege that the promise wasn't upheld and that they don't know where those tithes, which could total more than $15 million annually, went. The suit alleges the certified public accountant approached church elder and executive pastor Kevin Grove about discrepancy in the reconciliation of the Gateway Global Ministries balance. Grove allegedly became irate and told the employee to, quote, quit reconciling the accounts. Because, if you don't reconcile, it didn't happen. And it says, the only reason they filed this lawsuit is because they could not get answers from their own church as to what happened to the money, where the money was going, and they couldn't get the church to do what it said it would do, which is, quote, if you're unhappy with this, get it back so we can give it to a more deserving charity, Dortch said. So for my clients, this is the last resort. Now, I probably could have picked a church.
I was going to say,
any county, any state. Yes. But what comes up for you? I'm curious, do you have the same emotions with that as you do when you see fraud in other places? Like crypto, we talked about crypto crime apparently is skyrocketing right now. And on top of that, apparently 2 weeks ago, the Justice Department shut down the division that actually investigates crypto crimes. And so that's going to continue to go up. But I'm curious for you,
but crime rate will go down.
The crime rate will go down.
That is funny, Wally. That was really funny. I like that.
That's why they pay me the Bitcoin.
Oh my God, that was funny.
It's like if you get COVID.
I wasn't expecting that funny thing. That was good. For the listener, that means that if they're not investigating, there won't be a crime. See, you got that.
There's people that didn't want to admit COVID existed. If you got COVID,
Did it?
but you did not take the test,
It's
you don't
COVID
really
like
have
the whale in Jonah. I'm confused.
Oh my gosh.
Go ahead.
Okay.
We're chasing rabbits right now.
chasing.
I did have one question
Go
though,
for it.
which has got nothing to. I have no idea how you're going to get back to the parable of talents in this one.
Oh, it's
It's
an
not.
easy segue.
But anyway, segue. So I was just thinking that's an interesting lawsuit because there's a lot there. So there were promises, and they said they're basing their lawsuit based upon promises from the stage, pulpit, whatever, and also
Website.
comments from their website. What if a budget says we're going to budget this much money to something and it doesn't go? Do you think that the leadership has to explain that every single time? Or do you think there's enough room to wiggle around to say, yeah, but we didn't need it there, so we pushed it over here? Do you think that's the same?
Well,
I was going to say every church, I feel like every church does.
Well, every business does that to a certain extent.
been in a church in which we had a building fund, and people gave to the building fund, and they were upset that it looks like the building is not being built. It's not going to be built because of the decrease in.
What church was that again?
I don't know. But anyway, and so we had people that said they wanted their money back.
Well, no, I mean, it's a good question.
Really?
Yeah.
And so this has to do with, is this within the same scope? So if you're going to give budget money and it's, a leadership can make a decision whether it's going to give a raise. And so it may go over HR budget expenses expected as opposed to doing it toward maintenance. I mean, that's one thing, I guess. But I guess the lawsuit here is that it was almost earmarked. Back in the day, I'm thinking like Lottie Moon offering, if you were going to say, hey, I want it, remember the little checkbox on the envelope? I want to give this to Lottie Moon. And I guess if it didn't go to Lottie Moon, which is kind of a specific thing, that I guess that's different than going to
Well, it
operating.
just depends on, how they given. Are they designating it on like checks or whatever? Is there a certain account that it's supposed to go into, or if it's going into the general fund that they're assuming is taking 15%? If it goes in the general fund,
It's one of those, and a lot of churches do that now, where it's like a one fund where you put everything in this, but we're going to take 15% of this and give it to missions. And it was clearly not doing that. And when they hired this public accountant, they looked at the books.
Yeah, we call him a forensic accountant. Sounds so scary.
Yeah,
Grandma.
like-
Forensic
yeah.
accountant.
sounds like Quincy.
So
Quincy.
Remember
I do remember Quincy, yes.
Quincy,
He's a medical examiner, forensic.
Oh, that's
it's like a restaurant.
No, it just went. No,
go
that
to
was,
TV Land. You can watch it.
yeah,
That's
Perfect.
what it's called, TV Land.
that's the back to
Yeah,
talent
so-
now.
Come on, Quincy.
So for you, Jonathan, I'm curious, like, what do you think, like, not even just on the legal side, but do you think just from a trust standpoint, like a moral standpoint, is this worse than a business, for example, doing it?
Well, then that goes to this bigger question is a church put up whatever it's doing at a higher level? And I think that's a biblical statement that when a church is acting and interacting, they get this extra star to say, hey, what you do is a resemblance of what Christ would be doing, as opposed to the dirty, smutty little business that we expect.
Like the expectations.
The
Yeah.
expectations.
Yeah.
And I think that's a proper expectation. I think we should have a proper expectation of all people. But I do think on a legal basis, I think this could be an issue. I think there's one thing about moving operational money, a very small amount here or there. But if there is a bigger thing and it's not going there, I think it's a big thing. I mean, because people are giving for a reason. And like the one fun thing you said, which makes sense, even then, if you're moving money around to different paradigms, concepts, as opposed to give it to missions as opposed to operating, would you have given that just to operating as opposed to giving it to missions or giving it to home
Totally.
missions? Somebody needs help here locally. To me, that's an issue. I don't know if it's fraud. I guess it would be. I don't know. I haven't researched that.
Apparently, this pastor also, when he heard some of the grumblings during his sermons several times,
There you go.
he made the comment, by the way, if you don't like the way we're spending your money, we'll give it back to you. And
Cool.
so I think some people called him out on that. And he was like, no, that was like, figure of
I
speech.
just said
I
that.
didn't mean
Said
that.
You talk about setting dangerous precedent by saying if you don't like what we're doing, we'll give it back to you. That's
Yeah,
slippery ground.
I mean,
there.
that's even from like a legal standpoint. All those sermons are recorded, and I assume could be used like in
Could be.
some sort of case.
Sure.
So, yeah.
But that's very interesting. How we get into the parable of talents?
Does that go with last week's the unjust steward or this week's?
Well, let's think about.
Are
this,
they
right?
really separated, Wally?
We'll talk about that this week.
I can't wait, Blomberg.
about bringing like one of those really annoying buzzers for any time anybody said the word stewardship? 'Cause, like where else but in like a nerdy like theological or church like old school church context do you hear that word stewardship?
No.
The
Yeah,
Lord of the
I'll
Rings.
just-
Lord of the Rings.
Hey, okay.
Steward of the King. I just finished reading that chapter a couple of days
To
ago.
me, I read Lord of the
I'll
Rings.
just bleep it out every time. They'll be like, "Are they cursing?" Yeah, we said the S word, people. We said the S word. So, I mean, it is. It is a stewardship issue where we've lost trust in institutions, and I would say churches, but in institutions in general.
Well, government. I mean, everybody says that. I mean,
When we see people misusing funds, it's a big deal. And here we get to a parable where Jesus talks about, hey, you're going to be given a certain amount. of something, and we'll talk about that when we get into the parable. And if somebody wants to get Matthew 25 up to read that,
I have it ready, Tim.
that,
I
look at
love
that.
it because I want to read the CSB version.
Did you wear your glasses intentionally so you could see, or
Yeah,
you're
that's
going
right. I'll
to
be
if you
trying
take them off so you read slower?
Yeah,
Yes. Yes, that's what I'll do.
exactly. So I think this speaks directly, Jonathan, to stewardship and like.
Well, I didn't think we were using this word, Tim.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Fine.
Delay.
Okay. From now on, I will choose something differently, and you can call me out if I do. Deal?
Being an accountable person. How about that?
Yes.
We are in Matthew 25, verses 14. For it is just like a man about to go on a journey. He called his own servants and entrusted his possessions to them. To one he gave 5 talents, to another 2 talents, and to another 1 talent, depending on each one's ability. Then he went on a journey immediately. The man who had received 5 talents went, put them to work, and earned the 5 more. In the same way, the man with 2 earned 2 more. But the man who received 1 talent went off, dug a hole in the ground, and hid his master's money. After a long time, the master of those servants came and settled accounts with them. The man who had received 5 talents approached, presented 5 more talents, and said, Master, you gave me 5 talents. See how good I am? I did that part. I have earned 5 more talents. His master said to them, Well done, good and faithful servant. You were faithful over a few things. I will put you in charge of many things. Share your master's joy. The man with 2 talents also approached. He said, Master, you gave me 2 talents. See, I've earned 2 more talents. His master said to him, Well done, good and faithful servant. You are faithful over a few things. I will put you in charge of many things. Share your master's joy. The man who had received 1 talent also approached and said, Master, I know you. You're a harsh man, reaping where you haven't sown and gathering where you haven't scattered seed. So I was afraid and went off and hid your talent in the ground. See, you have what is yours. His master replied to him, You evil, lazy servant. If you knew that I reap where I haven't sown and gather where I haven't scattered, then you should have deposited my money with the bankers, and I would have received my money back with interest when I returned. So take the talent from him and give it to the one who has 10 talents. For to everyone who has more will be given, and he will have more than enough. But from the one who does not have, even what he has will be taken away from him. And throw this good-for-nothing servant into the outer darkness, where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth.
Ooh,
Gosh.
so much here. So much here.
So I should get my retirement person, my investment person on the line as soon as we get out of here. I don't have a person, but
You
I can
don't?
find one. Sure.
You are your own person, I
say
feel like.
your people talk to him.
Yeah, that's right.
That's right.
All right, we'll start with our favorite game. Has anyone heard this taught wrongly, or have you?
So tell me what it is rightly, and I'll tell you.
Yeah.
I mean, I've heard it. People,
Is this people or is this you? Is this a friend that you're speaking for?
People, in air
I'm
quotes.
speaking for a friend.
Yeah.
That these are literal talents, and
Oh, you mean like
being able to balance a pool stick on your nose or something.
Well, I
that-
think I have heard that before.
No.
Yeah,
Like a talent?
like
a talent.
I got you.
Like Americans Got Talent.
I got
Like
it.
you can juggle. Like you can juggle.
Yes.
that would definitely be a bad interpretation. I mean, I think you can go there as like a secondary application, but
Yeah.
that's not obviously what
Yeah.
that word
Yes.
means. I think for me, one of the ways I've seen this used is, you have the carrot and the stick. I've seen this parable used as a stick of, if you don't work, if you don't, do the things that you're supposed to, then you're going to be poor. You're not going to have all the things that you need. And I'm not saying you can't get that out of this parable. I just don't think that's what this is talking about. It's not giving you a justification of why the poor are poor or why you should not help the poor. In fact, like literally right after this, he goes and talks about, feeding the hungry and clothing folks and visiting the widow, all that. And so I don't think it's talking about that. I think it's talking about something different.
What's it talking about then if it's something different?
Let's talk about it.
Wally, what do you think?
Yes.
No, what do you think? You have something on your mind, I can tell.
He does.
You're itching.
We
You're
talked.
itching.
I know he
You're
has
itching.
stuff.
It's bouncing. Go ahead, Nuggets. Let's go ahead and get them out.
with like the contextual piece.
Yes.
Because that's where like I'm guessing a lot of the nuggets might be.
Okay, then
Some,
Contextual
some
plus.
that, and also language.
okay. So tell me about the contextual nugget, Wally.
Well, I mean, the
Obviously, I
hearers-
didn't study. That's why I have to
It's-
listen.
It's
This is gonna be how
I
it's gonna
cannot
go.
wait till you say something wrong.
Sometimes Jonathan plays the foil, and sometimes he just naturally is.
I think. Anyway, I'll let
Sorry.
that one lay there.
Liar.
When it comes to this parable, I think the hearers would, at least the actions of the one that buried it, they wouldn't see that as
Bad.
wrong at all.
Yeah.
Right? They would see that as that's prudent.
In fact, some scholars will say that there was actually a Jewish law against putting money in to earn interest, which I found interesting, which is what the master says, you could have at least done this.
So I don't. So they would. The original hearers would go, "What's wrong with why you throwing shade on this?" I'm sorry, I went on 2010 on.
So who is he talking to? The disciples still? Are we still back with the?
He's still on the disciples.
Yep.
He's still on the disciples.
Yeah,
Same mode.
He's still a disciple. So I mean, those hearers would have heard that and go, why is he getting so upset? I mean, he just did something was seemingly the right thing to do at that point in time. I mean,
he was called lazy, but in a sense, he could be, if you looked at a different angle, he was just protecting the asset.
it's a very common practice,
Right.
too.
I'd be terrified to dig anything up because I know me, I would never find it. I'd be like, it was somewhere.
What
In
Made
this
a
area.
GPS marker.
But what's crazy is sort of, if we might get to it, the treasure found in a field, right?
Right.
That if you found treasure in a field, it was yours. I mean, you didn't have to figure out who buried it.
It
Who
still is. It's called treasure trove.
is it? That's what it's called.
You just have to get a metal detector and
Yes. So there's a risk even at that. You bury it in a field, somebody just happens upon it, and it becomes theirs.
yeah,
Okay.
that's. I think making that third person a little bit more sympathetic is not something, if we didn't understand that context, that we would get.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's good. Anything else contextually on here? Well, let's start with the most obvious because you've already brought it up. What is a talent to begin with?
It's a counterweight. I just learned that right before we started. And BLB told me
He learned it.
it's a
20 seconds
counterweight.
ago.
It's not the value itself. It's what's determinative of what value is.
Yeah, it's not.
That could be a sermon, Riley.
A talent is not a denomination of money, right?
It's the counterweight.
It's the weight. It's what
It's the appraiser of the weight.
And
It's
what
the appraiser of value.
And okay, Mr. Study on talent. How much is a talent? How much is
20 years of a laborer.
How much does a talent weigh?
20 years worth of laborer's wages.
That's
Did I
not
not
a
answer
weight.
his
bro.
question?
No, that was straight off Wikipedia. So that's be true.
That was after BLB. actually. What is it there, smart guy?
75 pounds.
Okay.
Wait, one talent is 75
One,
pounds.
so you
Did
have.
they use pounds back then? Did they?
I think they were on the metric system.
The modern day equivalent of 75.
Thank you, Raleigh.
Whatever
It's a
the-
modern day
whatever-
equipment.
Many the shekels that ended up being, I don't know.
Okay, there we go. So 75 pounds of money,
Yeah.
of gold.
Or we don't know. It just says
Wait a
5
minute.
talents.
Oh, we do know.
NIV, which is, by the way, the same English that Jesus spoke, says bags of gold. And so
Well, we don't. It does not
are you
say
undercut-
bags of gold. It does say money later on when the master is talking to his unjust servants. You should have taken my money and at least given it to the bankers, and I could return interest on my money. He does go that, but up until that point, we're assuming that it's money, but it just says 5 talents of what?
Oh, I think we still have to. I mean,
Five
what would the disciples have thought? Oh, it's just something, or they would have said, "Oh, that's gold there." I mean, Matthew, who wrote this, would be like, "Hey, that'd be good for tax."
I was going to say, is this tax?
Could it not have been
So
like
I'm-
silver or copper or some other type of precious
other
metal or worthwhile thing?
As long as it's valuable, I guess it doesn't make a
I
difference.
think
here.
that's the key, is that it was of value. And it was not just a value, it was different levels of value.
Well, it says the word there is property, in which
Which word?
the word
Talent?
works. No, when he goes and he entrusted him to his property
Okay.
or possessions. The
Well,
word there is, I want to make sure I pronounce it right.
Check you out.
Oh, you check me out on this, and you'll
Okay.
find that I'm right. The word is huparko. Huparko.
You said that very well.
Thank you. And it's the Greek word that means I am, I exist. Well, thank you.
I was so confused for a second. Look at that.
It means to exist, to be, or to possess. And in the Hebrew, it is closely associated with haya, which is the word to be, in which we know the word to be is the word that God uses of himself, a form of it, to describe himself.
Interesting.
So possessions, he's not. So if we take that possessions in terms of I am, I exist, is it Jesus saying that God and this master is giving of himself, giving himself to these servants, and they're now being judged about how they're using the reflection of who he is in their lives? So could we be getting back to the image of God and what man is made for? And what,
oh my goodness.
I didn't hear any of that because I was just. Go
Okay.
ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Dave.
I mean, when you said that, it reminded me of a quote from, I believe it was A.W. Tozer, who said, what you think about when you think about God may be the most important thing about you. And his point was that how you view God, how you view his character is going to change the way that you act. And that really makes sense, because when you look at the parable, the third servant, what does he call him? He calls him
slothful?
No. I'm saying,
slothful.
what did he call the master? Is what I'm saying.
Oh,
He viewed the master as like sort of
as a prude?
as a renegade too, right? Like, let me see if I can find it. He said, I knew you were that you are a hard man, harvesting where you have not sown and gathering where you have not scattered seed. And so think about this. If you think of God as being this harsh, judgmental God, then your actions might be to protect, right? And to not actually venture out and try things, where the first two thought the master was honorable. And so they were maybe willing to risk more. They were willing to work for the master. And so I love that point, because I think how you view the master, and this point, how you view God is everything.
Thank you.
I wish I'd listened. I was.
Hey, Jonathan, I want to really encourage you to go back and listen to this podcast. I think you're going to find it fascinating.
You took a totally different jive than you were anticipating.
Can you tell me one more time for the podcast listener that was probably listening either? What did you say one more time? Just give me one sentence. What we think about money is what we think about God?
No.
Oh, I don't know. I wasn't listening. That's what I just said. What we think about God is what we think about money.
What we think about God is how we do with what he's given us.
Okay.
What's that? Is there a word for that?
Stewardship.
Oh, come on, guys.
And here's the other thing. The first two, when the master commends him, what does he say? And this is, he says, enter into the joy of your master.
Master's joy, what CSB says.
Okay, the master's joy. What is the master's joy?
I don't know. It's one of his rhetorical questions, Riley.
No, it's not.
You know.
It's not rhetorical.
Well, it's hard with the delay.
Y'all
so
shut up.
bear with me. If we're taking it from
the
the master is giving himself to his servants, then entering into the master's joy is just fully abiding in the master. Jesus, I am the vine, you are the vine in me,
John
and I
15:5.
abide in you. In that passage, and Jesus also talks about joy and the Father's joy, our joy being complete in that moment, total abidance together. And so maybe that's what it is here, is entering into that joy, is having that complete restored relationship with God.
So good. So good. I think if you'll notice, there's these themes in the last few parables that we did, especially the prodigal son. You have, such a tangible thing. You have the party, which I think is a great picture of the master's joy. And you have the older brother who is at the very end outside, right? Representing, he's outside the community. He's not receiving the master's joy. Here at the end, you get this line of outer darkness and weeping and gnashing of teeth, which we immediately jump to hell. But actually, this is a picture, at least the first century listener would, I think, have heard, oh man, I'm not in the house. I'm not in the wedding feast. I'm now cast out from my people.
The parable last week, we talked about the 10 virgins. They didn't get into the house, and the bridegroom says, I don't even know you. And here at the end of this parable, we see these these people that are this servant that has squandered what the master has given him. And he says, because you haven't valued, I mean, if we sort of follow sort of the track that we've been tracking, if you haven't valued me,
Right.
then
you don't know me.
Then you don't know me, and I don't know you. And then the next section is talking about final judgment. And so we're seeing that it's not just, oh, you're just going to miss out on some spiritual blessings if you don't use what God's giving you. No, if you refuse to use what God is giving you and for his glory, then you don't know this God of the universe. You don't know his son. And thus, because you don't know him, then judgment is rightfully coming to you.
So it is a relational thing here, like, and really all these parables, right?
Parables.
And not just relationship between us and the master and us and God, but here's where I think we do miss out in the West is the communal aspect, right? Like there is a relationship that we have with the family of God, and to put ourselves out of that by our actions and by the way that we interact with God is a really, really serious thing. And that's why, I mean, the ending, let's be honest, it sounds super harsh. Throw that worthless servant outside into the darkness. I mean, like, that's pretty rough. That's not like the Jesus that we like to like talk about a lot.
It was probably Yahweh that did that. All right.
Old Testament.
I was going to ask you a question. We're going to skip over the huparco word, even though no, but it goes back to the egalitarian complementarian thing of arco, which is the chief or the beginning, and this is under the chief or beginning. So we'll talk about that another day. Why is possessions called under the beginning or after the beginning? It's very interesting.
Wait, say that again.
Huparco. That's what he's trying to bring out so smart over there. It comes from the arco. We talked about this when we talked about images of God, where arco is the word talking about how supposedly the man is the arco over the woman because he's the chief. It talks about the keystone in like an arch. So we get the word architecture. This is below that. So possession here is below the beginning. It's after the beginning, which is very unusual. Has nothing to do with what we're talking about, but I thought it was interesting. So what I'm asking you, Wally, is you said you had some other nugget here.
No. I've just spent all my stuff.
Did you really?
I don't know.
Well,
yeah, you missed it. You weren't paying attention.
Be on. No, I really wasn't. I was looking at this
Thank you.
huparco word.
When I threw a huparco on,
I just started looking at that word. I thought it was really cool.
He went into a deep dive in that.
So I guess my question is, I'm listening to y'all, and I'm still not understanding this parable. And I have read this, and I've studied this. So we just came off the steward. Oh my goodness. We just came off the shrewd manager. We just came off the shrewd manager where he took the manager's accounts, money or equivalent value, and used it for himself. Okay. And then now we're moving straight into, and we just finished. He just finished in you're either going to be trusted in a little and you'll be entrusted a lot. And then I will give you something that's genuine, not disingenuous like mammon. You'll have to go back to the parable of the shrewd manager, hear this, which is 2 weeks ago. But I guess now he's segueing into just kind of the opposite, where mammon is kind of important here. Now it's maybe symbolic spiritually, I don't know, but take it for what it says is, it's like, okay, I'm the master and I'm now going to give you money and you're going to do something with it. Well, the shrewd manager did do something with his money. He didn't do initially what was correct, but then he used it for his own benefit to the master's detriment. So in this case, and he was commended for that. Right?
Right.
So here we're going to throw somebody in hell, or whatever that means at the end.
Not hell.
I got it. The fires of Gehenna, or into chaos at least, outside of God's presence. Is that viable?
Outside the community.
Every other version of weeping and gnashing of teeth and outer darkness that's in relation to hell.
Brignos. I just looked it up. So that's why I wouldn't listen to your last point. Or with the evidence.
You said,
okay,
56 years.
Now you're just trying to throw me off my question. So in this case, he's now intentionally using a parable that's not different, but he's completely, to me, turning on its head to try to explain, I guess, the same principle here. So I guess I'm struggling is I would probably be the one that would dig it in and put it in a hole because I don't want to lose it, because I don't want to upset the master because I lost his talent because it's very precious. Did he just not go look for something that was hidden in the field back in the Gloss series or something like that, didn't he? Was it the coin or the pearl or something? So I guess my question is, what's the point here? What is Jesus's point here? I don't know.
So I don't think it's the same as the shrewd manager.
Okay.
And I think that's part of like why these two are together. It's almost like Jesus says the shrewd manager, and he knows he's pushing like some tension and limits on the people that are listening. And then I think this is the one that talks more about, okay, so if not that, what then does it look like to do well with whatever you are entrusted, not with what this person over here is entrusted with or what this person is entrusted with. What does it mean to be a kingdom person and to do well and to act wisely with what you've been given?
So do you think this is different? Okay, I heard what you're saying. But do you think this is different? Because I think you're trying to make a point of line of demarcation between, well, when the shrewd manager, it was about the master's accounts and he didn't do well with that. Here, do you think that these servants thought it was their money, or do you still think that it was the master's money? I know this is where we're joking around about the steward thing, where a steward really is managing somebody else's money. That's what we did with the shrewd manager. Do you think they were managing the master's money? Did you not think they were going to come back? Do you think he was going to come back? Do you think they thought that?
Well, he just says that he's gone on a journey. Go ahead, Ryan.
I think they definitely expected him to come back because they bring back the money they had, the good ones had doubled it. They're expecting to return it.
And even the wrong or the evil, or however you want to put him, the unfaithful steward.
We got it. The guy that dug a hole.
Yeah, he expected him to come back and give an account. He was afraid that he didn't want to lose it.
I'm not going to push back, but
but he's going to push back.
Y'all are
so unlike you, John.
Well, that's a passive aggressive way to say, I assume we're making an assumption, not because of what the scripture says, but because of the reaction of the servants. Could they thought that he was going to go on a journey, and was he never going to come back? And then maybe he would get killed. What if he got killed? What if he didn't come back? What if he found a pretty lady that he wanted to marry and wherever he was going?
Be like us. We're going to take a trip. I think it's the same kind of connotation. It means that we're going to come back. It means we're just not going someplace to stay.
We're not moving.
That. Well, good, because I'm right.
My point. I think the reason I make this point. It's a big point, because if it's my 5 talents, it's my 5 talents. I'll do what I want to. I'll do whatever I want. I mean, I will. I'll do whatever I want to do. It's my 5 talents. It's my 2 talents. Hey, you can give me 1 talent. Hey, give me 10% of what you gave. 20% of what you gave the other guy. With 1 talent as opposed to 5 talents, it's my talent. I'll do what I want to. And if you do happen to come back, I don't want to have lost it. And I get what you're saying. Why would he have dug a hole if he thought it was his? Why would he have gone and bought a pig farm like our friend the lost son? But
he didn't buy a pig farm. He worked at a pig farm.
Whatever. You don't know that either. You have no idea. You weren't there. You weren't there. So,
unlike Jonathan.
Well, I got it. At least I know what it was or was not. My point being here, that's a big deal for me, because we're joking about the steward thing, but the shrewd manager knew it wasn't his money. It was never his money. He was working for the master. Do you think that the servant saw that they were working for the master, or that the master had given them something of their own to do what they will, and hopefully they would have properly used it to make more talents out of it?
I think it's the former, because all their actions were in relation, going back to your earlier point about how they viewed the master. If you thought the master was honorable, then you're going to go out and do well for him and present to him, this is what I did. And if you're wicked and lazy, like the third, he also, I think, had that expectation that he was coming back. Well, I'm not going to lose it, so I'm going to protect it by digging it in the ground. And you take it to modern day, and it's the same way for us, right? As followers of Jesus, if we look at our possessions as this is mine, we're going to spend it differently than if we have this idea of like, no, actually, it's what I've been entrusted with by a good and loving God.
I got something I'll throw in here.
Please. Thank you.
Our boy Craig Blomberg.
Oh, here we go.
Blom
suggests that he sees this as three different points of the
which 3 things?
That
do they all start with the same letter?
No, they do not. There's no
what
poem.
A horrible pastor.
There's no
not
poem.
Baptist.
There's no poem at the end of it.
Oh.
I suggest
Yes.
that this is not just talking about believers. That this is, he's saying God entrusts all people with these possessions. and that we all have to give an account what we've done with these possessions.
Well, there were no believers back in this parable anyway. I mean, there were the Pharisees,
the followers. So it's not just the disciples. Right?
Okay.
So these are followers of these Jews and Gentiles that God is giving all people.
Yeah.
These aspects of who he is in possessions, and that we are to give an account, right? Isn't this what we believe? This is what Christ has come to do, is fulfill our account balances where we fail, that he fills in for us, because we've taken what God has given us and we've done whatever we wanted to, or buried it, or scared to death, or however we want to see it.
And it determines what your relationship with the master actually is. I actually think it, and this is a little bit of a guess, but in the last parable, we talked about how it was to the disciples, but the Pharisees are clearly around and listening. If they're still here, what are they hearing? They're hearing, oh my goodness, he's talking about the day of the Lord when Messiah comes and there's a reckoning. And he's probably talking about us, saying that, you've been entrusted with all this and you're not doing anything with it. Here is what your relationship is actually like. And I think N.T. Wright brought that out, which I think it's a fair point. Here's another thing I want to bring up, and I know we're almost out of time. What do you do with, if anything, the fact that all three were given very different amounts in the beginning, and then the result based off that? Is there anything there? Like, why not just there were 2 servants, they were both given 3 talents. This is what the one did, here's what the other. It seems very intentional that there are different numbers for the 3, and then the reward at the end. So I'm just curious, like what
each one of them doubles, right? So you have 1, and then you have 1 that's given 2, and then 1 that's given 5. So you're almost
maybe
doubling.
He was just trying to do easy math.
Maybe he's just trying to do it, but you don't hear one servant complaining that, why did that other one get 2 and I only got 1? You don't see that as a prominent place.
Is that a purely American thing?
I mean, I don't know.
Or a human thing?
I don't know. Probably more human, but you don't see the people complaining, why did he get 2 and only got 1? I think it's, they should be thankful for what they got, and then they're supposed to use it for the master's purposes and his glory, or the joy of his master, right? I think that's
the real reward, is that, even more so than the fact of like they doubled. I think that's like great, but I think if you look at it, both the first 2 servants, he says, like, basically, come celebrate. You're welcome now to the joy of the master. And I think that, the talents, 75 pounds or whatever aside, the biggest thing is this relationship with the master.
The talents are a means to the end, right? They're not the end in itself. I use these things for my master's business, because that's my joy, not my job. And now I get to enter in what he finds most joyful about himself. Now I've been working for this. Now I get to enter into those places. I get to be a part of those places with my master.
And God celebrates them both the exact same way. Like, there's literally, he doubles it, but he also welcomes them in. And I think this cuts against, okay, I'm going to get a little bit critiquey about churches in our country, but we know that what do we do when a church grows to 4,000, 5,000, 10,000 people? We take that pastor.
We let him be the keynote speaker at every conference.
Oh yeah. He is now a rock star. He's on the cover of Christianity Today. He's being interviewed by the Gospel Coalition. And yet,
boy,
yes.
All of a sudden, what's your boy?
Matt Chandler?
No. The other one you just said, I can't remember.
Russell Moore?
All of a sudden, Russell Moore got him on the podcast. Sorry.
No,
Russell Moore's not a Christian.
No,
I know, but he'll still want to be.
He does.
Anyway, your point being, yes, becomes a superstar rock star.
Yeah, and my point is, there are churches of 20, 30, 50, 60 people all across this country where the pastor stays faithful just week in and week out with that small group of people, and they're not growing like crazy. I think this cuts against our mentality that bigger is better, and reminds us that the kingdom is actually about with whatever it is that you're entrusted with.
This just followed the parable. I got confused. Sorry. I was thinking this. I thought this followed the shrewd manager, but that was in Luke. So this follows the 10 virgin.
Yes,
10
that's right.
bridesmaids,
Yes.
where we said last week that This was about, while we have a time, we should have an expectation to see Christ, and we need to arrange our lives appropriately and be ready.
Yes.
Be ready.
And so it goes to y'all's point. Well, they should have an expectation that he's going to go away, but he's going to come back, which goes to the concepts of the bridegroom
Yep,
coming.
same
Okay,
thing.
got it.
Yep.
And so we should be expectatious. And we have the oil from last week, which I still think it had to do with Jesus. Back to the golden lampstand.
Oh, by the way, the first time talent is used in Scripture?
Right here.
No.
Where?
In Exodus chapter 25, dealing with the
Oh, I saw that.
lampstand.
Golden lampstand.
Yeah.
Which,
First time talent is used in the Scripture.
just like I said, I introduced that to everyone last week.
I just wanted to
The
affirm you
golden
with that.
sanctuary.
God. With me.
No, I'm not angry with you. I do appreciate you finally agree with me. So my point is that this still does have to do with our proper expectation that the master is coming back. Where we had oil last time, we needed to have ready, and now we've been given a talent of which we're supposed to do something with, right? So are we overcomplicating to say other than just that? It's just like whatever we have been given, we need to put it back, and the investment will come, and we don't need to hide in a hole. I don't know. I'm asking for a friend.
I mean, I do think you have to be careful. I don't think the point of this parable is that if you do well with the two, that you're going to get another two. I don't, because we see that so many times. That's not the case.
I didn't mean to say it that way.
Because the ultimate thing is getting more talents versus doing what my.
It's not his talent anyway. It's just the master's talent. He's going to give it back. So he gives it back the 4. He gave back the 10, and what he gets in return is the joy of the master.
Exactly.
He gets to share in that. It's very similar to Shrewd Manager, is that he gets to share in the master's joy. So it wasn't about the talent in the first place. It was, which to me is funny because the talent wasn't the value. The talent was the measure of the value. There was no value to the talent. It just represented what true value was. In this case,
what the master says that the value is.
Well, and which this is determined through the counterweight, of which the real value here was the master's joy, the presence. He's back, and look what we have for you still.
That
here.
was the ultimate win.
That was the win. It wasn't the talent and how much they made. Look, I got 10 and they only have 4. It is what I had. I did my best in expectation that you're coming back, and we'll get to share this with you, and I get to trade that in for being and sharing the master's joy.
And I think a lot of times we see this kind of mentality. I want to work so I can get the crown. I mean, for believers, we get the crown of righteousness.
I just want a big mansion, bigger than yours,
Right.
on a mountain, not in a valley.
So I work in order that I can get that crown, right? And so the ultimate end is not that we do it for the joy and the glory of Christ. But
We lay the crown at his feet,
Exactly. Get the crown.
We throw it at his feet.
which is what this thing says.
Which is we enter into joy. We did this not because it was our job, because it was our joy.
Right. And so I think if people look at this parable and they get to the end and they think, oh man, this is about judgment, I think that's in there. But
it is about judgment. What you've done with it, you're going to be accountable for.
Well, that's not bridesmaids. They didn't get invited to the party.
They didn't get in the house, did they?
Once again, another parable where we self-select ourselves out of the picture, right? The older brother totally could have been part of the party. I mean, he owned everything the father did, literally.
At least half.
But I think a lot of times we try to ameliorate these kind of
That makes these make better.
or lessened. To lessen the impact. Well, it's just about spirit. You just don't get the spiritual blessings. No, there's some eternal consequences for you acknowledging who your father is, working for his glory, and then returning back to him that which you've worked for all your life, which is for the glory of Christ, versus those that live their lives for themselves and self-protective of those things. And so there's eternal consequences for those things.
Totally. And that's why I think if the Pharisees are listening to this, it probably would have been a wake-up call of like, wait, is he talking about us? Are we going to be shut out of the party?
And the question for us is, why are we working for what we do? Why are we working with what we have for what we do? What's our ultimate end for those things?
And again, just to circle back, I think it all depends on our view of God, our view of the master. Do we look at him as kind and good and compassionate? Or do we have this picture of like Gandalf the Grey and he's like zapping everyone with lightning, that he hates? That matters. How we view the character of God is going to help determine what we do with what's been entrusted to us.
I wish I had said that.
Well, you should go back and listen to this podcast.
Vicariously through Tim.
No, you already said it, and he said it. I didn't say it.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys. I think this has been a great discussion. Next week, you're not going to want to miss it. We are hitting another one of the famous ones, the parable of the Good Samaritan. I'm not sure if we can do that in one podcast or not,
good
but
stuff.
we will try. So have a great week, everyone. We will see you next time.